Number 10. The Coelacanth. The coelacanth is one of those animals that likely exists, but it might not. This prehistoric fish has been alive for over 400 million years. It was actually thought to have been extinct until it was rediscovered off the coast of South Africa back in 1938. It managed to hide in the ocean for literally millions of years. This fish is even known as the living fossil fish. However, nobody actually knows how many of these beasts are still living in the ocean. Back in 1994, a survey estimated that the population could be somewhere between 230 and 650, but keep in mind that was over 20 years ago. They could actually be extinct again, or at least close to it. This prehistoric beast and its existence in our waters is skeptical at best. In the past decade, there have been reports of around 19 of these fish being caught in nets around the coast of Tanzania, but that isn't really proof that they are thriving. The coelacanth very well might have popped its head out of the extinction window only to go back into the abyss. With the number of fish in the ocean decreasing at such alarming rates, it wouldn't be a big surprise if these dinosaurs were gone again very soon. Number 9. Megatherium. The giant sloth is a prehistoric animal that once lived and thrived in the jungles of South America. And even though paleontologists say that giant sloths died off thousands of years ago near the end of the last ice age, right around the time that woolly mammoths and saber-toothed tigers also disappeared, there is some sketchy evidence that the giant prehistoric sloth could still be hiding in the density of the South American jungles. It's all about the legend of the Maypingwari. It is said to be a frightening prehistoric monster that lives in the darkest corners of the forests. The legend has been around for generations in South America, but there might be a lot more to it than just bedtime stories. So far as the legends go, this monster stands at least 9 feet tall, it has huge claws and its feet face backward. It even has an extra mouth on its belly. It's said that this monster eats herds of cattle and has even assaulted at least one human. Mainstream scientists say that the existence of such a creature is impossible, but it does sound a lot like the giant sloth. There have been no confirmed sightings of any such beast, but that doesn't mean it can't exist. The description is almost spot on to what a giant ground sloth would look like. They walked on all fours, and when standing on their hind legs, they loomed over 10 feet tall. They also had huge claws and special backward-facing feet that they used for digging. Number 8. The Megalodon. The Megalodon has risen in popularity a lot over the last few years. It's widely regarded as the largest shark that ever lived on Earth, and one of the biggest predators in our planet's history. Megalodons roamed the sea starting about 28 million years ago, and they supposedly went extinct 1.6 million years ago. Most scientists believe they were wiped out during the Pleistocene extinction, one of the great extinction events that wiped out a huge portion of life on the planet. The Megalodon was massive. Some of the teeth discovered were at least 7 inches long. Reconstructions using fossilized remains put the Megalodon at around a maximum length of 54 feet. That would make it 3 times larger than a current great white shark. But whether these giants of the deep still exist somewhere deep in our oceans is seriously doubtful. The issue here is that nobody has any real evidence to suggest they do exist, but there is also no evidence that says 4 or 5 of them couldn't still be lurking around 10,000 feet below the surface of the water. There could definitely be one lurking around somewhere, but scientists have not managed to find it. To be completely honest, it's not very likely, but it's not impossible either, and that's what's so exciting about the Megalodon. Take the megamouth shark for example. This shark was not discovered until 1976, and it's pretty enormous. It's about 15 feet long, and it lives around 15,000 feet deep. Still, just because one big shark eluded us until the 70s doesn't mean the Megalodon isn't still eluding us now. Or does it? Number 7. Gigantopithecus. Gigantopithecus was the largest primate that ever existed on our planet, and it was twice as tall as an adult human. It's also very likely that this huge ape could very well still exist. Sightings of Bigfoot, also known as the Sasquatch, have been going on for thousands of years. All over North America and even in South America, there have been reports of giant hairy creatures at least 10 feet tall that look like a mix between a monkey and a man. And what we are calling Bigfoot could actually be the Gigantopithecus. This is obviously not confirmed by anyone, and according to live science, the prehistoric primate went extinct a few 100,000 years ago. Plus, it actually roamed the forests of Southeast Asia, not North America. But that doesn't mean one of its relatives couldn't have survived the ages and somehow made it into the wilderness of North America. Considering how smart the great primate probably was even millions of years ago, it's undoubtedly capable of hiding from humans in some of the wildest places left. The Gigantopithecus stood over 10 feet tall, it weighed around 600 pounds, and there have actually been very few fossils of the animal discovered over the years. There have only been teeth and partial pieces of the primate's jaws found. This has left a lot of questions surrounding the evolution of the primate, what exactly it looked like, and how exactly it went extinct. All anyone knows is that if Bigfoot really does exist, there is actually a scientific chance that it could be the legendary Gigantopithecus in hiding. Number 6. The Immortal Plesiosaur. Plesiosaurs were dinosaurs. They were a type of marine reptile that existed millions of years ago. There were many different kinds of them living in our oceans, but they were all relatively similar. Keep in mind that this was about 65 million years ago. But nonetheless, there could very well still be not just one plesiosaur, but a few of them still living on our planet, disguised as the Loch Ness Monster. The plesiosaurs all had very similar features. They were all reptiles with a fat body and a long neck that hunted fish in our prehistoric oceans. Even though they were wiped out, because there were so many different species of this type of animal, it is possible that somewhere in a remote pocket they could still be thriving. A lot of people would love to believe that the Loch Ness Monster is in fact a giant prehistoric plesiosaur, one of many that have been living for years inside the loch. And while I love the idea of it, and it's hard to debate the uncanny similarities between what these marine dinosaurs looks like and our common idea of what the Loch Ness Monster looks like, there are some serious issues. For one thing, the Loch Ness Monster has supposedly been spotted on land. Plesiosaurs were unable to venture out of the water. But the biggest issue of all is that as a marine predator, a plesiosaur would need so many fish to survive that it could never have made it 65 million years inside of Loch Ness. It's just straight up not possible. Still, who knows for sure? Maybe there is one of these prehistoric beasts hanging around somewhere unseen by us. Number 5. Dinosaurs. This may come as a bit of a surprise, but some people don't think the dinosaurs ever went extinct. Of course, a lot of these are the same people who think the Earth is flat and lizard people are in charge of the government. Still, we can humour the possibility that dinosaurs are still lurking around and kicking about. The biggest win for the possibility of dinosaurs being alive is that nobody can demonstrate with 100% certainty that every last T-Rex vanished off the face of the Earth and is never coming back. Because after all, there is an astronomically small chance that some species in some part of the world managed to breed in very small numbers without ever being discovered. There are lots of reports of there being a dinosaur living discreetly in the jungles of the Congo, but of course, it's impossible to prove fact or fiction. That being said, dinosaurs probably don't exist today outside of chickens, crocodiles, and rats. Some creationists still cling to the idea that dragons mentioned in the Bible and in ancient folk tales actually speak of dinosaurs. And of course, all the conspiracy theorists jump on board and claim that dinosaurs could have actually gone extinct much later than previously imagined, after being hunted down by a bunch of valiant knights. But it's probably not true. Number 4. The killer of the Megalodon. If you want an example of prehistoric creatures alive today, look no further than the great white shark. Most of us already know these sharks are prehistoric and come from millions of years ago. But what you may not know is that some experts believe great white sharks are actually what eventually killed off the Megalodon, which could actually add to the possible evidence of a small number of Megalodons still living in the oceans today, but maybe very deep down where they can hide from their arch enemies. The story goes like this. For 20 million long years, the Megalodon was the king of the ocean. It was a 50-foot super predator, and out of nowhere, it vanished. According to Science Alert, a new study has found that the Megalodon supposedly went extinct right around the time when the great white shark rose to become the apex predator of the world's oceans. With this new timeline, experts believe that the great white sharks, who first showed up on Earth about 6 million years ago, were better predators and were able to beat the Megalodon at its own game, stealing all of its food and rising to the top of the food chain, therefore forcing the Megalodon into hiding. So, while the Megalodon may have been the hugest ocean predator ever, our very own great white sharks were actually more effective. Number 3. Woolly mammoths. The majority of woolly mammoth fossils have been discovered in Russia in the Siberian permafrost. This is because the vast and mostly empty regions of eastern Russia were once home to some of the most incredible prehistoric animals, such as woolly mammoths, saber-toothed tigers, and even ancient lions. It makes sense that all these fossils are hiding underneath the ice, especially since most of these animals only went extinct around 10,000 years ago. Our ancestors actually lived alongside the amazing woolly mammoth. Could such a beast still exist in the remote Siberian taiga? The answer is maybe. A recent video posted online actually showed what appeared to be a woolly mammoth crossing a river. But a blurry video on YouTube is not to be trusted. If you talk to the local Siberians, some will say yes and some will say no. There's a famous story from the 1940s in which a military pilot flew over the dense northern regions of Russia and spotted a small herd of animals that looked a whole lot like woolly mammoths. And there was another story of 1978 in which people saw what they believed to be woolly mammoths congregated near a very remote river. It's hard to believe, I agree. These accounts are all nothing but urban legends. But considering the last mammoths lived very recently, it does feel like something that should be possible. According to the director of the Pleistocene Park in Yakutia, Russia, the very last woolly mammoths lived on a small island in the east about 3,380 years ago. That would have been during the Roman Empire. Number 2. Saber-toothed tiger. This is the most ridiculous story that has ever been a story. The chances of a saber-toothed tiger still roaming around in the wild is about the same as a pack of woolly mammoths. It's probably not happening. But that didn't stop Tiger King star Joe Exotic from trying to bring back the saber-toothed species by forcing his animals to mate. If anyone saw the hit Netflix show Tiger King, they know all about Joe Exotic. Supposedly, he had an obsession with freakish lions and tiger hybrids, and one of his dreams was to somehow breed and crossbreed until he could recreate an Ice Age predator. As reported by the Daily Star, Joe did manage to create a liger, but of course he never made a saber-toothed anything. He even claims that he was working with genetic experts at a Texas university to try and engineer extinct prehistoric animals. But almost anything this lunatic said was false, and we will probably never get to see a saber-toothed tiger or lion ever in real life, unfortunately. Number 1. Titanoboa. The Titanoboa was an enormous snake believed to have lived about 60 million years ago. It would have lived in the same time right after the dinosaurs went extinct, and on average it's believed these snakes grew to be around 40 or 50 feet long. They also weighed over a ton. In terms of prehistoric animals that could still exist, the Titanoboa is the number 1 suspect. Unlike woolly mammoths or Tyrannosaurus rexes, the Titanoboa would be extremely difficult to find. Even though these monstrosities are so long and huge, they would be living in rivers in the Amazon jungle where almost nobody goes. They would be super difficult to locate, especially if there were only a handful of them left. There has been no definitive proof, and despite several fringe news reports stating that local Amazonian tribes have seen the prehistoric snake themselves, it's just not confirmed. However, it is highly likely that something huge and slithering could be hidden in the jungle. It could be a different species of anaconda, a new type of evil snake that can swallow a person, or the last remaining Titanoboa in existence. Keep in mind that alligators and crocodiles are prehistoric monsters, and they would have lived about the same time as Titanoboa. So, it's really not as far-fetched as it sounds. It's definitely more realistic than a marine reptile from 65 million years ago living in Loch Ness. Number 10. Decapitated cockroaches. Cockroaches are famous for a lot of reasons. First, because they are absolutely disgusting and freak people out. And secondly, because everyone knows that in the event of a nuclear holocaust, the only survivors left will be rats and cockroaches. But there is actually a third thing that makes cockroaches famous as well, and it's their uncanny ability to live without their heads. That's right, cockroaches can be decapitated and continue living for weeks. According to a biochemist at the University of Massachusetts Amherst who studies the development of cockroaches, it's important to first understand why a human or another animal can't survive a decapitation. This may seem obvious, but the main reasons you die when your head is cut off are because you bleed to death, you can't eat without your head, and you can't breathe without your mouth. Plus, your brain would obviously be gone. But in the case of cockroaches, they don't really function the same way we do. Cockroaches do not have a large network of blood vessels like us humans. Instead, they have something known as an open circulatory system, and so there is not very much pressure inside the system. This means that when you cut the head off of a cockroach, their necks simply seal off by clotting. Because of this, they won't bleed to death. Plus, cockroaches don't breathe out of their mouths. They breathe through tiny little holes in each body segment. That means they can breathe without having a head. Plus, roaches apparently don't need their brains. The cockroach's brain does not control their breathing. As a result, when a cockroach is decapitated, it can simply keep on going because of all its functions will still work and oxygen is still carried directly into the insect's tissues without needing a mouth to breathe. The only issue is that eventually the cockroach will need to eat, after maybe 2 weeks, and then they will die because they can't eat anything without a mouth. Number 9. Bee. A honeybee might not be able to live after death, but they can still get their vengeance. What I'm trying to say is that even after a bee dies, it can still sting you. A honeybee can sting even after it's had its brains smashed. And it can even sting after the stinger has been removed from its body. This is because the bee's nervous system is extremely complicated and more decentralized than our own. If you were to somehow get a bee's stinger stuck in your body, the nervous system of the bee even after death will still work automatically to pump venom from the venom sac directly into you. The exoskeleton, muscles, and nerve ganglion will still act just like they would if the bee were still alive. The only thing that the bee can't do is actively sting you. You have to be silly enough to poke yourself with the stinger. And after that, nature just kind of does its own thing. In fact, a lot of animals in the wild are instinctively aware of the bee stinger and its immortal power. The California jay scrub will decapitate the honeybee and eat its head, leaving the abdomen and the stinger behind because it knows that even in death, the honeybee won't stop stinging. Number 8. Octopus Arms. Octopuses are definitely the coolest animals in the entire ocean. These are the true aliens on our planet, and there are so many different aspects of an octopus that makes them amazing, it's impossible to detail them all at once. But what we're here to talk about is how an octopus's arms, or their tentacles, can still react for up to an hour after being cut off from their dead body. They will even try to pick up food and feed a mouth that isn't there. This is because octopus tentacles are filled with an incredible number of neurons and nerves, and each tentacle basically has its very own brain. Not only can each arm work independently, but each sucker can also work independently. And a lot of this independence has nothing to do with the octopus's brain. Think of it like if your arms and fingers could do everything without your brain telling them to. So, when someone cuts off your arm, your fingers will still find your cell phone and start texting. It's basically the same thing with an octopus. Not only will an octopus's arms continue to move on their own after being separated from the host body, but if the octopus is still alive and has one of its tentacles cut off, it can simply regrow a new tentacle. It has regenerative properties that are far superior even to that of a lizard. According to the Smithsonian Magazine, the octopus can regrow its tentacles using a special protein called acetylcholinesterase. Humans actually have this protein too, but our stores are much less active than an octopus. Number 7. Salamander Regeneration. Let's keep moving with regeneration. Octopuses and salamanders are two of the most capable animals on the planet at regrowing their limbs. But salamanders take it a step further. Not only can a salamander regrow an entire limb, but a salamander can regenerate parts of its major organs. A new study of the axolotl, a small aquatic salamander, has revealed that special immune cells called macrophages are critical for regenerating lost limbs. With this information, researchers are hopeful that they can somehow transfer it into the human system so that maybe one day we can regenerate our own flesh. According to an expert from the Australian Regenerative Medicine Institute, in the future we may be able to reverse engineer the power of salamanders into human therapies. But of course, we are a far way off from this science. Number 6. Headless Toad. You have undoubtedly heard of the Headless Horseman, but what about the Headless Toad? A recent video has surfaced of a headless toad leaping about a Connecticut forest, and it has apparently left scientists stumped. According to Global News, the adult toad was discovered in 2016 by a herpetologist at the University of Massachusetts. The toad looked completely healthy, with perfectly functioning legs and arms, but it was missing its eyes, nose, jaws, and its tongue. It only had a small hole where its mouth should have been. Because it was early spring when the toad was found, it had probably just come out of brumation, which is the toad equivalent of hibernation. After posting the video of the headless toad online, nobody could come forth with a proper answer. The best theory is that the toad was attacked during hibernation, but its attacker didn't finish the job. Then, when the toad woke up, it just kept on living its life without its head. But you have to wonder what exactly is going on inside the non-existent brain of this toad. Does it know that it has no head? How does it even know where it's going? Another theory on how the toad lost its head but continued to survive is a little more disturbing. A wildlife veterinarian suggested that it could have been a parasite known as the flesh-eating toad fly larvae. This really nasty fly lays its eggs inside the soft tissues of a toad while it's hibernating, and then when the larvae hatch, they eat the toad's flesh. The toad very likely could have woken up in the middle of this with its head gone. Number 5. Fruit flies in suspended animation. Who would have thought fruit flies would be the first to master suspended animation? New research at the Florida Atlantic University is now saying that fruit flies can basically put themselves into a state of cryogenic sleep. Whenever the fruit fly senses low oxygen levels in its body, it can put itself into a coma-like state where it then stays for up to 72 hours. You might actually have noticed this before. If you've ever seen some fruit flies sitting in a bit of water as if they've drowned, and then they just randomly got up and flew away, they were just in a state of suspended animation. And let me tell you why. When any creature's body gets low on oxygen, organs begin to function poorly and the brain begins to stop working. This is why you can suffocate to death without oxygen. In order to survive, flies have figured out how to put themselves into suspended animation to protect the neurons in its brain. The human equivalent of this would be if someone began to strangle you, or if you were oxygen deprived because of some environmental issue, like drowning, and rather than dying, you just put yourself into a suspended animation so that the cells inside of your brain didn't get damaged with the lack of oxygen. Then, you would wake up 3 days later and hopefully there would be more oxygen in your body. Number 4. Deadly snakeheads. Rattlesnakes are bad enough as it is. These horribly venomous serpents are an absolute menace. If you're a native of Texas, you have probably had at least one experience with a rattlesnake in your life. But you should know that these venomous creatures can indeed live after death. They are very similar to bees in this regard. An excellent example is from a recent story in 2018 when a Texas man narrowly escaped death after a decapitated rattlesnake sunk its fangs into him. According to the local news station, this fella had been working in his yard in South Texas on the weekend when his wife spotted an evil rattlesnake. It was a western diamondback, and to protect his wife, this guy leapt into action with a shovel and chopped off the snake's head. Everything seemed well and good, everyone seemed safe, but then as he bent over to pick up the severed head of the snake, it struck out at him, sunk its fangs into his hand, and filled him with venom. According to the man himself, the head literally spun around just to attack him. This is obviously not a great situation to be in. The western diamondback rattlesnake is a very nasty bite and is potentially lethal. It causes blood clots and can make your kidneys shut down, while also causing internal bleeding, damaging muscles, and causing the area around the bite to rot. If left untreated, the mortality rate is about 10 or 20%. As for the attack from beyond the grave, snakes are cold-blooded and can continue to function on impulse after death for a short time. This includes striking out even without a body. Number 3. Flatworm life after death. How would you like to be able to regrow your head? Well, if you were a flatworm, you absolutely could. These little worms can regenerate their heads and tails after being cut into pieces. This is unlike other types of worms that can only partially regenerate body parts. Flatworms are special in that you can cut off any piece of the worm and it magically turns itself into a new worm. This is according to a molecular biologist named Jochen Rink. He claims that if you cut a flatworm anywhere along their length, the part of the worm that still has its head will grow a new tail, while the part of the worm that has its tail will grow a new head. You essentially get 2 new worms. The science behind this is obviously complicated. It basically involves signals and stem cells that can trigger the growth of new body parts when necessary. And apparently, with a bit of tinkering, flatworms can even be forced into growing a secondary head rather than a tail. In this case, it will be a 2-headed worm, and each head will control one half of the body. You can even make a worm with no heads and 2 tails, which makes it a little confusing as to why these animals need a head in the first place. Number 2. The Immortal Jellyfish. It's time to talk about the Immortal Jellyfish. It's one thing to survive in a brutal environment or to regrow some limbs when one of them gets bitten off, but it's something else altogether when you can literally live forever. There is only one miraculous animal that can do this, and it's a species of jellyfish known as the Immortal Jellyfish. It was first discovered in the 1880s in the Mediterranean Sea and has since become a pretty famous animal on Earth. It can literally live forever. First, the jellyfish starts as larva. Then, this larva develops from a fertilized egg. The larva will swim around for a while, then settle at the bottom of the sea floor where it grows into a cylindrical colony of polyps. After some time, the polyps will grow into animals that we know as jellyfish, and these jellyfish will grow into adulthood in just a few weeks. When fully grown, this jellyfish is only about 0.18 inches across. That's smaller than a pinky nail. You would basically never see this thing, and yet it has 90 white tentacles and is fully transparent. Just imagine being that small and having that many tentacles. But here's where the immortal comes into play. In response to physical damage, starvation, or anything that could threaten its existence, the jellyfish reverts back into a polyp. This polyp then starts the process of growth all over again. Basically, the jellyfish turns back into a baby, slowly grows into an adult, and then when it feels death is near, it will transform back into a baby. In theory, a single jellyfish can go through this cycle infinitely and forever. Number 1. The Green Hydra. The last on the list is an animal that doesn't actually live after death because it has devised a way to escape aging and therefore live eternally. But it does this in a different way to the immortal jellyfish. The immortal jellyfish goes through a continuous cycle of birth and regrowth. But the Green Hydra is a spindly freshwater polyp that can seemingly live forever without aging. Unlike almost every other multicellular species, the Green Hydra does not show any signs of deteriorating with age, according to research published in the journal Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. You might wonder how scientists could figure this out, and it wasn't easy. Over a span of 8 years, researchers kept an eye on a massive group of Green Hydras in a closed environment and found no evidence of aging at all. And after this experiment, one of the researchers believes that the Green Hydra can live forever under the right circumstances. It doesn't need to live after death because it never dies in the first place. Of course, in the wild, these polyps do die all the time because of disease, predators, water contamination, and all kinds of other external influences. But under the perfect conditions, the Green Hydra could really live for all time because it simply doesn't age. Number 10. The smallest horses. When you think of the most unique horses in the world, you may picture a tall, lean horse with a flowing mane and wild tail. But some horses, although smaller in stature, are equally as unique. A special breed, known as miniature horse, is by nature smaller than your average horse. But one known as Thumbelina is even smaller, standing at only 17 inches tall, that's 43 centimeters. Due to a physical condition called dwarfism, she is exceptionally small, even among others of her breed. The problem is dwarfism in horses causes problems with their legs, results in deformed skulls, and gives them a wider body, which can cause ongoing complications and be debilitating to the animal. Another miniature horse known as Einstein from New Hampshire was born smaller than Thumbelina, but he does not have dwarfism and is instead a healthy miniature horse. Taller than Thumbelina, he is in fact the smallest stallion in the world, measuring at only 14 inches tall, that's 35 centimeters. Sadly, Thumbelina passed away in 2018, but another horse of small stature has been making waves. A miniature Appaloosa from Poland named Bubble is just 22 inches tall, that's 56 centimeters. But Bubble doesn't let his newfound fame go to his head. He visits a local children's hospital once a month to cheer up the young patients. What do you think of these tiny, cute stallions and mares? Would you ever adopt one? Do you prefer it to a dog or cat? I think a pet miniature horse would be a lot of work, but might be well worth it for an animal lover. Let me know your opinion in the comments below. While you're there, remember to subscribe if you haven't already. There are always awesome new videos coming out with facts you'll be glad to know, and you won't want to miss even one. Number 9. The tallest horse. From the smallest horse, we meet the tallest horse, Big Jake, who was crowned the world's tallest horse in 2012 by the Guinness Book of World Records. A draft horse from Belgium, Big Jake weighed in at a whopping 240 pounds when he was just a foal. When he reached the age of 7 or 8, his owners realised they had a very special horse on their hands. Compared to an average horse that measures about 50 inches or 1.25 metres tall at the shoulder, Jake's height of 60 inches or 1.5 metres is what sealed the deal with the record books. But his size didn't make him any different. In fact, he was very affectionate with the family who owned him and loved it when they paid extra attention to him. Number 8. Japanese and Chinese horses. Another breed in Japan known as the Noma pony is extremely rare and centuries old, coming from Mongolian horses from the 17th century. At one time, it was illegal to breed small horses, which caused the Nomas to almost go extinct. As adults, these horses stand about 40 inches or 1 metre tall, and a breeding society that was established in the late 1970s took steps to preserve this rare species. Deep in the heart of southern Asia, a different breed known as Guaxia is one of a few known horse breeds native to China and is one of the smallest horses bred in that country. Their name, which means under the fruit tree, comes from their common use in orchards. Found standing under the fruit trees as farmers picked them up and put them in baskets, the ponies were carried around the orchards. The breed was believed to be extinct up until 1981, when some reappeared. With a small head and ears and short neck, they come in bay, grey and Rhone colours. Found in various counties in China, the ponies are good for children riding and driving and are easily moved around in rocky environments. Some statues from 2,000 years ago are believed to depict these rare horses, demonstrating just how old they are. Number 7. Sooty. A particular gene in horses known as the sooty or smutty causes black hairs to grow with the regular coats of the animal, resulting in counter-shading, dappling and even striping. The feature is sometimes seen in lighter animals with cream dilution. The darker striping and shading can also come out at certain times of the year. Some wonder whether this colouring comes about as a primitive striping found in dark palominos and dark bay horses. Known as counter-shading or colour modifiers, these darker tones can show up in smudges, patches, stripes, spots or even dabbles. Found in both chestnut and black bases, the colouring is believed to be passed on genetically, though researchers are not sure how and why it is so dominant in some over others. Number 6. Leopard Appaloosa. One look at the Leopard Appaloosa and you will see that it is a truly unique breed of horse. Spotted horses have existed since before horses were domesticated, and they fell out of favour in Europe for centuries before the breed was brought to North America. The most high-profile breed, the American Appaloosa, is just one of many breeds that have these patterns. The most familiar characteristic Appaloosa patterns are the full leopard pattern that consists of holes in the white spotting rather than dark spots on the horse's coat colour. There are two genes that are involved in the formation of Appaloosa patterns, one that controls the presence or absence of Appaloosa characteristics, and another gene that modifies the appearance of the pattern. Number 5. Blue Rhone. The blue Rhone is a rare colour found in some horses. It starts with the foal, who has to have black legs, a genetically black body, and roan, which is a horse's coat colour pattern that has an even mixture of coloured and white hairs on the body. With equal parts coloured fur and white fur, roans with a blue colouring are instantly recognisable. With a 50-50 mix of white and black hairs, they are not actually blue, but a horse with a dark black base. The mix of both black and white hairs gives a blue-hued appearance, which is where it gets its name from. The mane, tail, head and lower legs of the roan can either have less white hair or can be entirely absent. Always roan at birth, blue roans can sometimes be born solid black and shed their baby coats to reveal the roan colour. They are sometimes mistaken for Sabino or grey horses. True blue roans do not have any patterns and their colour is consistent. Even though it can change during the seasons, it doesn't get more grey or white as time goes by. They also have different genes, and interestingly enough, inherited genes don't skip generations, meaning two non-roan parent horses can't produce a roan baby. Some grey horses when they are foals often look roan instead of grey, but grey horses must have a grey parent. So, if your foal has at least one parent that is grey, it is probably not a roan horse. Although they can be rare, there are a few varieties of breeds that can produce true roans, including European draft breeds like the Italian heavyweight and the Rhenish German cold blood. More common in North American breeds, they are found in quarter horses, standard breeds and even mustangs. Two famous roan horses include Royal Blue Boone and Blue Valentine, two horses who ran in races in the 1950s and 1980s. A beautiful horse that is a bit of an optical illusion, the Blue Rhone really is a special breed. Number 4. Turbiano. Another unique pattern found on horses is the Turbiano coat, with large rounded white spots on the body and white legs. The horse also has a dark coloured head. Wondering how horses like the Turbiano get their unique colouring? It is the result of a deletion of colour. Their coat is due to an inversion of chromosomes. The best recognised of all white patterns on horses, they are closely related to pintos. The name of the coat patterns comes from where they appear on the horse's body. Most markings on Turbianos are on the chest or neck. Part of the larger American paint horse breed, Turbianos are well muscled and so versatile. They are used in competitions, to work farms and for trail riding. Would you want a Turbiano? Let me know in the comments below. Number 3. Bashkir Curly. One look at the Bashkir curly-haired horse and it's easy to see why they turn the heads of anyone who sees them. An ancient breed, there is still a lot of mystery surrounding them and where they come from. Because of that, they have been talked about everywhere from North America to China and even Russia. Some Native Americans were believed to have told stories of a curly-haired horse of the Battle of Little Bighorn, with supposed photographic evidence supporting these tales. In China, curly-haired horses were depicted in art as far back as 16 AD. But could the horse have originated in Russia, where a photo of a curly-haired horse was found, leading people to believe the animal has Russian origins? Wherever they are from, they are said to have originated from a stock of wild horses, with the Sioux people believing them to be a sacred animal, reserved for chiefs and medicine men only. If you have always wanted to ride or own a horse but you are allergic, then the curly horse is for you. They are missing a specific protein in their hair, which makes them hypoallergenic. Their curly coats can sometimes shed completely in summer, leaving them completely bald. Either way, with a unique coat and in colours from beige to blacks, and with both patterns and dilute colours, the curly is a unique breed. Number 2. Nbstrapper. Relatively new in North America, the Nbstrapper is a breed that has been well established in Denmark since 1812. The first, a chestnut mare with leopard spotting, produced a colt who had even more noticeable spots. Later bred to a number of other horses, the mare and her sire produced many offspring with the same stunning spotting and established a new breed in the process. The North American breed has the same colour genes as those from Denmark, but after so many years of crossbreeding, it's hard to tell if there are any true Nbstrappers left. After nearly dying out in the mid-1900s, 3 Appaloosa stallions were brought to Denmark to add new bloods to the breed. The American breed came from one of 3 Appaloosa mares who were mated with a European stallion. Some believe one of the mares, who had a particularly energetic and friendly nature, is said to be the reason the breed is so mild-mannered. 3 distinct types of Nbstrapper have developed, including one bred for sport, one to drive carriages and to serve on military duty, and smaller ponies who work well around children. But they have also developed a number of different variations in colouring, including evenly distributed leopard spots, frosted colouring or spotting, marbling, and some with just a few spots. While they may still be popular today, a cave painting in France that goes back more than 25,000 years shows a very similar horse with striking resemblance to today's Nbstrapper. It seems that the Nbstrapper has long been a prized horse. Number 1. Fjord. The creamy coat of the Norwegian Fjord horse makes it one of the most recognisable horses in the world. But that's not the only thing it is known for. They also have a compact body and a distinct flowing mane. They are considered one of the oldest and purest breeds that migrated to Norway over 4,000 years ago. Even though 90% of the breed are the striking brown dun colour, there are a few extremely rare colourings, including the extremely rare yellow dun, which can have a completely white mane and tail. Most horses have some form of white markings, but the Fjord horse rarely does. Sometimes they do have a small star mark, but if they have one or more marks, they are considered not acceptable for breeding. They get their status as being one of the purest breeds after evidence was found of over 2,000 years of breeding. The evidence was found while excavating Viking burial sites, and there was no crossbreeding from other horses. They are so prized that they are found on the coat of arms of 2 municipalities in Njordfjord, Norway. A strong breed that is relatively small to other horses, they are agile and often used as light draft horses. They are also popular in use for therapeutic purposes, for children with disabilities and in therapy. Sadly, when a few generations were crossbred in the 1800s, the breed nearly died out. But luckily, after seeing undesirable traits appear, like fierce temperament and unattractive colouring, the crossbreeding was stopped and the Fjord horse regained its place at the top of the horse world. Thanks again for watching, everybody. What is your favourite horse from today's video? Tell me why in the comments below. And while you're there, don't forget to like this video and subscribe so you can stay updated on all the newest content coming out. See you next time!